Hello, hello, welcome back. 'Tis I, Julian Greystoke, your beloved host, and today we're doing another book review. Hooray! That review is for a book that I literally just stumbled across. I asked my library's website for books that were available to listen to now, and I went for the YA thriller genre, and the book You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight popped up. That title is a lot, and I feel like this book wanted to have one of many other titles, including something to do with Final Girls, but all of those titles were already taken, so it went with You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. A line which, if it was ever said within the book, I missed completely, and I was kind of listening for it, so didn't love the title. But what about the book? Let's read the blurb on Goodreads. At Camp Mirror Lake, terror is the name of the game. But can you survive the night? See, Survive the Night is one of the titles that I think it wanted to have, but it couldn't because that was already taken. Charity Curtis has the summer job of her dreams, playing the final girl at Camp Mirror Lake. Guests pay to be scared in this full-contact terror game as Charity and her summer crew recreate scenes from a classic slasher film, Curse of Camp Mirror Lake. The more realistic the fear is, the better for business. But the last weekend of the season, Charity's coworkers begin disappearing, and when one ends up dead, Charity's role as the final girl suddenly becomes all too real. If Charity and her girlfriend Bezzy hope to survive the night, they'll need to figure out what the killer is after. Is there more to the story of Mirror Lake and its dangerous past than Charity ever suspected? I mean, obviously, we've read thrillers before. So this is a YA thriller, as I mentioned, and it is almost a supernatural thriller. It goes there, but it doesn't go there. I don't want to explain too much because I don't think I want to fully spoil this one, but I loved some elements of the story, and I thought it dropped the ball in some other very key places. So we'll start off in our usual place talking about the characters. Charity is a really fun character to me. She is not your standard final girl, quote unquote. Charity is black and she is a lesbian, and she is also very, very dedicated and into doing this horror experience that she's part of, which I'll talk about that more in a little bit, but that was one of my favorite elements, was the horror experience. And she is basically running it. She's been doing it, this is her third year, and now she's basically running the whole thing at 17 years old. Kind of unrealistic there. I love how dedicated she is. I love how much she loves the whole scenario, and she's a very good leader. While she's in charge of people, she also will take on every burden that she can herself, and she does not shy away from difficult tasks. And so I really like her character. I love characters that are passionate about something, and she's so passionate about this experience that she's helping run that I just love her. And she's really, really excited about the final night because it's supposed to be the best night, and she's so thrilled to be playing the main character, the final girl, for the last big night that's coming up. And so I really enjoyed her character. The other ones, not so much. There were a bunch of coworkers all together to make this horror experience happen, and they were fairly forgettable, unfortunately. There was a big nice guy. There was the Latino one. I feel like a lot of them kind of just fell into archetypes. There was her girlfriend, who was her girlfriend. I think there was another girl who was into one of the other boys. I don't know, one of the boys was gay. I can't remember because the other characters, they go one ear and out the other. They are not important because this is basically a slasher book and they are death fodder. But in a book like this, if I can have a main character that I'm excited about following, I'm not too bothered by it. There's also some villain characters, like this creepy old lady who shows up at a certain point waving a gun around, and also Charity's boss, who we don't even see until later in the book, but she mentions him and talks about him, and he owns the horror attraction. He just lets a 17-year-old run it. Okay. So not much to report as far as characters go. So now let's talk about the plot. And I'm going to kind of mix it in together with the world building because a lot of the plot has to do with the horror attraction that they are running, this Camp Mirror Lake attraction. So the attraction is based on a fictional movie that happens in the world of the book, but it's very similar to Friday the 13th. There's a camp, there's a lake. So the set of the movie is still there, and that's what the characters use as this like fake camp for the horror attraction to run people through in what is essentially a LARP. I had a friend who was like, I didn't like this book because I didn't believe the premise, and I was like, what, you mean the LARP? And they were like, yeah, it doesn't seem realistic. And I'm like, oh, no. Because I LARP. I'm a big old giant enormous nerd, and honestly that it does not seem that unrealistic to me. Like, maybe there are some factors that are unrealistic. Not a lot. My friend was like, well, you know, it's a lawsuit waiting to happen because, you know, the people are going there to be scared, and it's like full immersion so the people can be touched and lightly shoved and even like restrained as part of the experience. The people sign a waiver beforehand, and you might be going, yeah, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen, until you remember that there are like combat LARPs. Like, I'm a member of what might be considered a combat LARP. We hit each other with sticks. Like, yeah, as part of the game. So waivers can cover a lot of sins. The people sign up, they know what they're getting into, they give permission for, you know, to be touched, to be lightly shoved, to be scared. You know, it's a full immersion LARPing experience that these people are signing up for. They want to come and pretend that they're in a horror movie, and like, to me, that does not seem like that weird of a premise. In fact, I really want to work at this horror experience. It sounds amazing. I could sit there and listen all day to the details about how this experience runs. Like, they go into pretty solid detail about how everything works, how they move characters from point to point, the different points in the night that they have to hit, herding guests around to make sure that they see all of the different like plot points in the story. They even kind of decide which of the guests they're going to let be the quote-unquote survivor of the night. Like, basically whichever guest they like best, whichever one seems like the nicest person. And sometimes if the guests are all assholes, there's no survivor. So yeah, that seemed like a really amazing experience, and I wish that I was helping be part of it. I want to NPC for that LARP. So the plot and the world building are interlinked. So obviously we have that going on, but eventually people are gonna have to start dying, right? This is a slasher. And it seems like the perfect scenario is basically being handed to the author. We've got the main character who's super hyped about the final performance, and we have this like ominous feeling that something's gonna happen. Like, there are little clues that something's not quite right going on around the place. Things are being left open. They find a dead owl on top of a skylight for some reason, and like weird little things are starting to happen. And also, and I also really loved this, the attraction has a big turnover. So like, a lot of teenagers work there and a lot of teenagers quit. They no call, no show. And that's so normal that when people start going missing, the characters don't actually suspect anything because they think that these people are just being flaky teenagers and quitting without notice. And I liked that a lot because I've worked in a lot of jobs that had a high turnover and people just wouldn't show up to work, and you just had to assume they were fine and were just giving you the middle finger and never showing up again. And like, I really liked that as like a clue that was right in front of our eyes that didn't feel like a clue, especially if you've worked jobs like I've worked where there's just a high turnover and a lot of people just have a tendency to just quit. We've got this perfect setup. This camp with all of these, like, there's secret passages, there's a big PA system for horror sounds, there's a camera system, everybody's got headsets, and I'm like, this is gonna be amazing. Because what I thought was gonna happen was that they were gonna get to the final night and be doing the final performance when the actual slashers started to attack them. That sounds amazing. There's lots of people around to die. You know, the innocent civilians who are here to LARP can die. We don't care about them. And then her friends and coworkers can start dying. We care more about them. It would have been amazing. But instead, a weird old lady shows up and starts waving a gun around and saying vague things that don't even make sense later when you find out who she is. Legitimately doesn't make any sense. I'm almost wondering if the ending was changed at some point. But she shows up waving a gun around, and so the owner says, we're canceling the final performance, clean up and go home. So the main character and her friends are just stuck there cleaning up. She's disappointed, there's no final performance. And that's when things start to go down. And that really disappointed me because you've got this amazing, amazing setup that I'm in love with. And you're not utilizing it to the best, in my opinion, of its ability. It's utilized some. Like, yes, they do spend some time, like, using the tunnels, using the cameras, using the PA system, but not enough.
There was even this really small plot beat of the main character where one of her just like daily goals was trying to make really realistic looking fake blood. And like, yeah, on the one hand, that's just a little extra thing that she does to show how dedicated to this attraction she is. But on the other hand, I was waiting for the fake blood to come into play. Maybe she made really amazing looking fake blood. And while they're running the killer around the attraction, she uses the fake blood for something. But no, none of it really mattered.
It felt almost like as an afterthought instead of this amazing thing that you set up to allow the lead characters to outsmart the killer. Like, I thought that's where we were going. Like, certainly people were gonna die, but we also kept getting beat over the head with how this, like, is gonna be different. The main character is not your stereotypical blonde, white final girl. There's mention in the book of Black created horror and how it differs from horror media that is created by white people. And I was like, oh good, that means that we are gonna see some of that different style of writing horror. And I was so excited. And then it just started hitting all of the beats. The characters would be like, we're not going to fall into the stereotypes and traps. And then they immediately started falling into the stereotypes and traps. They were separating. They were wandering off. They were going closer to danger when they should have been running from it. All of the cliches were just suddenly happening. And the book went from something that was really interesting and engaging with a lot of potential to something that was just like every other horror out there. The bad guys are pretty cliche, and then there's a double twist too. Who are the real bad guys? And by then I didn't even really care because the book had devolved into such a painfully average thriller slasher book that I was just sitting there just so disappointed. Like, I saw so much potential with the setup that we had, and we didn't. I don't want to spoil it for you because you might still enjoy it, especially if you go in knowing that even though it seems like it's going to be different, it's not. But if you can just enjoy it on its face as a regular schmegular old horror thriller slasher, then you'll be fine. A little bit about the world building that I didn't mention to go along with the LARPing attraction that the main character is running. Aside from the fact that she's a 17-year-old and she's running this, like, the least realistic thing to me was that she's 17 and she's running this all by herself. The owner, who is an adult man, never even comes around anymore. He just lets her run it. And everybody listens to her. They give her a minimum of back talk. Seems the least realistic to me, I'll be honest. Everybody's fine with listening to a 17-year-old girl. Has not been my experience with life, but okay, I guess suspend my disbelief about that. But then the other element of the world building is very near the end. We start to get this, like, is this supernatural or is it not? And it seems like it's gonna land pretty firmly in the realm of not, but then, like, pulls a switcheroo at the last minute and maybe it is supernatural, and I didn't like that either. There are some books that pull that sort of thing off well. I don't think that this book pulled it off well, in my opinion. And finally, how was the craft, the writing itself? I felt like it was pretty solid. There were some, like, word repetition and a few awkward sentences. The dialogue could be a little bit cringy in some places because we are dealing with teenagers. A lot of them are queer, which is cool, and I won't say that they didn't say anything that I haven't said to my queer friends, but it still could in some places feel a little bit like, how do you do, fellow kids? I will say though, it is difficult to write realistic teenage dialogue. I think the more I age, the more I find that it is legitimately difficult to write realistic teenage dialogue. And the ones who would be best at writing it are teenagers, but they're also usually not the best at writing. So there's the problem. I guess consult lots of teenagers if you can, if you're writing teenage dialogue would be my advice. But overall, I felt like the writing was fairly solid. Not amazing, but it did its job. I'm definitely interested in checking this author out again and seeing if I like any of their other work, because this had a lot of potential and I did really enjoy the main character. So I want to see what else they have done and if they can become an author that I can really enjoy. Have you read You Weren't Supposed to Die Tonight? What did you think about it? Do you enjoy YA thrillers, slashers, horror books? Let me know some of your favorites in the comments below. If you have any to suggest to me, I'd love to hear them, especially if they are written or starring POC. I want to see more of that for sure. And of course, more gay books. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. If you would like a supernatural thriller of your very own to read, I have a book. It is called Second Floor. You can check it out now. It is not YA, but I think teenagers could still enjoy it. Don't forget to check me out on Patreon, and also I am a developmental editor, so if you have written a supernatural thriller and you want someone to look at it, I might be the someone that could do that for you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see all of you again next time with whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Bye!
Amity, rarity. I've got it! Its real name is
Sarah, Lisa, Amanda, Jenny, Savvy, Scribbling Cat, Rennie, Jesper, Zaire, Shelby, Callison and Sophie, Patrick, Belle, Light Julie, Hidden Glade, Kit, Puppet Master, Merween, Sophia, Ashley, Swamp Goblin Waifu, Melissa, Afra, Deborah, Rita, Alyssa, Celia, Amanda, Lafone, KJ, Jessica, Caitlin, Ursula, Robin, Jojo Bookish, Bear, Kirsten, Pudamancer, Mooney, Kohikaro, Kira, Sam, Haley, Pansing Pony, Roma, Veda, 78 kilograms of shade, Cat, Sarah, Nico, Sunnyshy, Bird Anonymous, July, Martha Baggins, SB Boots, Ruin Queen of Oblivion, Laknunga, Constantina,
Jen,
and Gay Tutter.